I've recently had a few questions come up about the tools I use to do my knapping, so I thought I'd shoot a little video here on my tools and explain what they're for and show you just exactly how I use these tools. First off, you need some pretty basic tools like a hammer stone. This is something that isn't too complicated. I always judge these by the weight compared to the size. You know, the more mass, the better they are as far as breaking down a heavier stone. And you can see the impact area of this stone, both ends. I use different sizes. Here's a little medium one, and then a little small hammer stone here. So once the work is done using hammer stones, if the piece is still pretty big, then I might go up to a big chunk of moose here. Now, the blue blades that you saw me show here recently were made using this big, heavy moose billet. And you're thinking, how in the world could you hit this against something as delicate as glass? But really, I slow the speed down and I let the weight of the tool do the work. Once it impacts the side of the piece, the mass of the tool pushes the flake across without a lot of effort. This is probably my favorite billet right here because it's really good for big and small pieces to work. Now, I want you to notice how I hold these tools. I have the fingers spread all along one side, the back side, palm up, thumb here, and I hold it in the exact same way that I would hold a hammer stone, as you see here. And then I would take the hammer stone and I would just strike like that. Do you see the motion of just striking right down? What that does is that removes flakes very, very easily with that motion. Take the billet here, do the same exact thing. Oops, there's a kind of a little blocky chunk in here. You know, that's how knapping is. You never really know what's hiding in a stone until you start hitting it. Well, the stone's still got some pretty good stuff in there. So that's a little bit about the percussion tools, and of course here's a smaller one for doing something a little more delicate and refined. Now, after you've done your percussion flaking with these percussion tools, the hammer stones and the billets, then you're going to move on to pressure flaking. Now, pressure flaking is where you take a leather pad, place it in your hand, and then depending if you want to be abo or not, you use antler, or you could use a modified antler with a copper nail in it. Now, you can get these at the hardware store. It's pure 100% copper. And why I use copper nails is because it has the same properties that antler does, except it doesn't require as much resharpening of the tip area. As you get working along, this wears down a lot slower than this tip will here, and you just have to stop and, you know, clean up this tip more to get good use out of it. You don't want it too dull on the end, because the wider the surface area here is when you're pressing against the edge of a flake, the more force it takes to push it off, because you're pushing something wide against the edge as opposed to something more pointy, which takes less power to push it off, you know, push it further. So you can make yourself a flaker by taking a nice antler tine, drilling it out, taking one of these nails, cut the head off, and now you've got a nail that can be, oh, you notice I put a little set screw in the side here. This way I can adjust how much of the nail that I want to be in this tool here. You can see I can reload it like that. But I haven't quite used this one up yet, so I'll probably use that one until I can't adjust it anymore. And you just tighten it up and it's good to go. So that's a good pressure flaking tool right there. I like it for the length. It fits in my hand very well. I hold it with my fingers wrapped around and my thumb up here in the point. And so when I go to pressure flake, I can put the flake right here, push right in on the edge. I like to push in, a lot of pressure in, and then just tilt it a little bit to let that fracture occur, which will make the flake come off. Leather pads, here's a nice thick piece of leather. Sometimes guys break points because they have the leather too stiff and they work in this part of their hand. Well, I don't recommend working down in your palm because when you push on the edge you tend to bend the point, causing it to snap, or the ears will hit here somewhere, causing them to fly off. So when you're working, I like to use this pad here because it's nice and soft. It's 2 layers excuse me, of leather that I've sewed together, and I work right up here on the very top part of my palm in this area here. So if you work up here, the piece now, let me see, I've got a flake here. Now the piece is up here and you can push in on it and not cause it to snap by pushing in up high up here. That suspends these sides out and not putting undue pressure on them. Okay, and the flakes come right off easily. So once you've made your preform, say this was the finished piece, now it comes to the point where you need to notch it. Well, you can start out your notch with your pressure flaker. Say you push off a little area here, right here like this. Just carve out a little area. You turn it over and you push inward like that. And you keep trimming it till you bring that edge all the way back up to the top. Now if you want your edge to be a little finer, you can take that same tool, make another one, and pound it out flat like a screwdriver would be. So that allows you to get in much narrower than the width of this copper nail here. So now you can just go in there and just cut it in very, very tight. Notice I'm just taking a little bit of flakes off. So that gets you in there a little tighter. This is kind of falling apart because this flake wasn't really a good example of a preform. Those are a lot more balanced and easier to notch than just a thin flake, because these will fall apart. So that's pretty much all you need, but be sure in between any flake you take off that you use a sandstone or maybe some sort of a grinding block. This is a stone that was made for sharpening grinding wheels. Works great as an abrader. You can see the wear that I've put in it. But this one here is a natural sandstone. You can see the wear pattern on this one from me turning it around in my hand. And a braid between the flakes because that stiffens the edge up. See, this edge is razor sharp. You really wouldn't want to hit that because that would just crush the edge or collapse it. So with proper abrasion, you notice there's a lot of dust flies when you do this. Make sure it's very well ventilated where you flint nap. Either have a fan going. If you nap inside, put a dust mask on. Don't breathe in the dust. You can get silicosis, which is flint knappers' disease. Killed the gunflint makers over in England. They sat in dark rooms with just a lamp, and they made gunflints all day, and they breathed in the dust, and they lived very short lives. So this pretty much is a look at the tools, a little bit of explanation as to how they're used. One of these days I'll get around to doing an actual point from the start to finish. Try to edit it out so I don't hit too many boring parts. I know some of you guys that do know a little bit about flaking from time to time run into a thing like you see here, a hinge. See that, where a flake goes in, stops abruptly? Well, this is a great tool. D.C. Waldorf showed me this once when he visited with me, and he says this hinge picker is the thing that saves him on all his work. What it does is it allows you to get the tip of this flattened out nail in there and pop that off. Now if I was to put some real pressure against that, I could pop that hinge out of there. So this really helps a lot when you're napping and you got little hinges popping up here and there. So make yourself a little hinge picker, nail, pound it out flat, put it in a piece of wood. You could stick it in a little piece of antler tine. Works just as fine. And Here's a little abrader here for when you get in the notches. You might want to grind the notch just a little bit. You get in there with this little piece of broken grinding wheel. Works very, very well. So that's your whole toolkit. You don't really need a whole lot more. Everything I've ever made, I've used just these tools you see right here. It's kind of a combination of new and old, you know, the hammer stones and the antler. But the new part would be replacing the tip of this antler tine with a longer lasting copper nail that can be adjusted in and out. So I hope this was helpful to anyone who's trying to be a flint knapper, learning to be a flint knapper, having problems with flint knapping. This video is for you guys, and I wish you all good luck, and enjoy the knapping. Don't get too crazy, and take a break once in a while, and get away from it if you get frustrated. So thanks for watching.